Since when do judges apologize to attempted killers with hit lists? We'll get into that and the shooting at the White House a few days ago. Plus, we have some updates on Iran. Is the war almost over? All that and more right now. Welcome back to the Republic Brothers Podcast. He's Matt. I'm Mike. Today is May 6th, and this is episode 55. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next episode. We're going to start the show off today with a shooting at the White House that happened about 10 minutes after we finished recording on Monday. Around 3:30 p.m., plainclothes Secret Service agents spotted a man near the White House complex who appeared to have an imprint of a firearm on his clothes. When uniformed officers approached him, the man tried to run. He then pulled out a gun and opened fire at the officers. The Secret Service returned fire, striking the suspect. He was then taken to a local hospital, and while his name has not officially been released yet, he is currently in custody. A juvenile bystander was also shot during the exchange. Fortunately, the injuries were not life-threatening, and investigators believe the suspect was the one who hit the minor. The White House was briefly put on lockdown while the situation was sorted out. President Trump was inside at the time hosting a small business event, but his schedule was not interrupted, and he was never in any direct danger. Interestingly, the shooting happened shortly after Vice President JD Vance's motorcade passed through that exact area. Now, what in the world is going on these days? Democrats keep talking about taking all the guns, yet they're the ones who seem to use them for all the wrong reasons.
Democrats want to be the only ones with guns. Look at Iran. The IRGC gets its way because they are the only ones with guns. The left has repeatedly said they need to take out Trump. There is a belief that this will end when Trump leaves office, but I'm here to warn you now, it will not. The left painted Mitt Romney as a racist with, quote, binders full of women, despite the fact he was the most average person in the country. It is all about power for the Democrats and most politicians, to be fair, and they will do anything to get that power and keep it. Look at Virginia. They elected Spanberger because she ran as a moderate Democrat, but the moment she took office, she was a radical leftist who wanted everything the far left of her party wanted. Trump, for his part, is starting to do the same thing. We saw he just said to Republicans to get in line or else, and the voters in Indiana, for example, told everyone that is what they want. You don't have Republicans out here telling their base to go eliminate whoever the opposition is, like the left. But what a time to be alive in the U.S.
Agreed. And if you don't believe us, here's the receipts.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
I don't think that it does you any good running away from Donald Trump. I think you need to go back and punch him in the face.
A lot of people have tried to draw similarities between Mussolini and Hitler. The difference, though, I think makes Donald Trump even more dangerous.
Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes.
Don't miss Trump next time.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
I said, no. I said, if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
That right there is all you need to know. That has been happening since Donald Trump put an R next to his name when he announced his candidacy for president the first time. The rhetoric has ramped up the longer this goes. Look back at every country that fell into a dictatorship, and the common theme is they disarm the population before they turn into socialist or communist countries. Hey, Mike, does that remind you of any European countries?
I think you could name a few.
More than a few.
All right, and that leads us into our next topic, which is also about a shooting. Cole Allen, the suspect from the shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner, appeared in front of a judge, and the judge started apologizing to the shooter for how he was treated in jail. This is really hard to watch without cringing if you're a conservative.
Developing this evening, a federal judge apologized to the man accused White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter for his treatment in jail. Cole Allen's attorneys say he has been subjected to solitary confinement and denied basic requests inside the D.C. jail. Our Matt Gregory has been following this for us. So, Matt, now that the judge has apologized, what happens from here?
Judge Zia Faruqui inside the courtroom wanted to know why Cole Allen was deprived of the normal privileges allowed for inmates. The comparison he made in his mind was simple. If January 6ers got standard treatment, why isn't Allen? Cole Allen back in federal court in his orange jumpsuit listening while Judge Faruqui had questions for the Department of Corrections. Allen's attorneys provided evidence that during numerous psychiatric evaluations, Allen has never shown any signs of suicide risk or homicide risk and has no known enemies in the jail, but still the D.C. jail placed him in solitary confinement with 24-hour lights and 5-point restraints at times. Then the jail moved him to restricted confinement, but still denied him access to the Bible he requested, denied him access to an iPad to communicate with family, and denied requests to speak to his legal counsel at times. Tony Towns from the Department of Corrections said Allen has been found a suicide risk, but produced no evidence. But he said he believed it was because of the political violence and high-profile nature of the attack that he was subjected to these conditions. When Judge Faruqui asked him if this is about precautions because of the nature of political violence, why were no January 6 rioters placed under these conditions? Towns didn't answer, but said they are working to accommodate Allen's requests. The judge apologized to Allen, then laid out his demands to the Department of Corrections. Essentially, they have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to explain when a final decision will be made on how Allen will be housed. Now, at the same time, the judge had a demand if Allen isn't given the same treatment as the January 6ers. He wants a list of reasons why and to explain how they will keep Allen safe while not infringing on his rights. And if you're wondering why the judge made such a big deal about this, he pointed out that this is about our justice system. In this country, he said, you have the right to a fair trial. You also have the right to be presumed innocent as much as these allegations are serious. Lorenzo?
Okay, good update there. All right, Matt, thank you.
Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff wrong with this story. You can tell this is obviously a clip from a left-leaning news station. So let's break this down from the top. I'm about to dunk on every single one of this delusional judge's claims. Now, the clip starts out with the accusation that Cole Allen wasn't given the same basic rights as the January 6ers. Instead of the judge not taking a political stance and being, a judge, he decides to take it upon himself to try to virtue signal. And this right here is what's wrong with the justice system. This judge is obviously biased and wanted to make the most of his 15 minutes of fame. The judge wants to know why he was placed in solitary confinement and in 5-point restraints. He just tried to kill people. What kind of question is that? He walked into a building full of high-profile figures, including the President of the United States, armed with multiple weapons. He had a manifesto of people he wanted to kill. And this judge doesn't see why someone like that should be in solitary with extra safety measures taken for the officers?
Well, what you said is right, but you left off the most important part. This man ran into a gunfight that was what? 1 versus 1,000? At best, 1 versus 100? That is suicide. He thought he would go in and kill his targets. And if he thought he could kill the president and other members of his administration and still get away, he is absolutely insane.
Yeah, there's no way he was walking out of that building. They also say that he wasn't given access to an iPad to communicate with family, and his request to talk to his legal counsel was denied at times. Again, what are we even talking about? Inmates get iPads now, Matt. Inmates have better technology than poor people. Think about that for a second. And on the legal request thing, as someone who used to work in a jail, you don't just get to come out of your cell and talk to whoever you want, whenever you want. There's a process. I'll give you an example. People would come in all the time demanding that they get to make their phone call. They don't have to give you your phone call as soon as you ask for it. As a matter of fact, you're not getting that phone call until you cooperate and let the officers finish their booking process. And if you're being difficult, that could take hours. You make a request to speak to your lawyer. It gets scheduled. It doesn't happen as soon as you snap your fingers. The guy from the Department of Corrections said that Allen is a suicide risk due to the political nature of the crime, and that's also why he was placed in confinement. If an officer gets arrested and taken to jail, do you think they throw that officer in general population? No. Usually that officer is placed on suicide watch regardless of whether or not he made any suicidal statements. He gets put in solitary confinement so that they can monitor him. It's all about keeping people safe. Donald Trump wasn't placed in general population when he was booked, and his alleged crime was nowhere near as serious as attempted assassination. The jail has to assume that if Allen goes to the back of the jail with all the other inmates, that there's going to be some people who want to hurt him because of what he did. Just like child molesters don't go to Gen Pop. Allen being in solitary is for his own protection.
Completely agree. He's a huge risk for the jail. Just imagine the uproar if Cole Allen died in custody. Just think of all the conspiracy theories that would come out if that happened. Others may want to kill him, but his actions alone also say he doesn't understand the risks he is willing to take. As I just said, he went into a gunfight with a 0% chance of winning, but he still thought it was a worthwhile trip. The guy showed through his actions that he doesn't understand risk. As you said, he went after the most well-known person in the world, so he may have created some enemies. And you worked in the jail, Mike. Do they watch the news in general population?
Every single day. That is one of the main things that's on the TV every day, is the local news and national news.
Not really up for their decision, I would also imagine.
Well, nowadays, like I said, they have iPads, and they can watch stuff on these iPads and communicate with people on these iPads, which is just nuts to me that your tax dollars are going towards Joe Schmo in jail being able to play around on an iPad. Like, that's nuts.
There should be no technology for them at all. Jail should not be so comfortable that you don't mind going there. It's a punishment and a consequence to get you to change your actions.
Yeah. Now, this moves us to the judge's next question. He asked why none of the January 6ers were treated like this. Oh, but they were. Due to the political nature of the crimes, they were housed away from Gen Pop with each other. Most of them were placed in cells for 23 hours a day. Many of them spent months in solitary, which I'll remind everyone Elizabeth Warren and the ACLU calls cruel and psychologically damaging. And on top of that, an unannounced 2021 inspection by the U.S. Marshal Service found that the D.C. jail complex fell below minimum standards, citing issues like mold, vermin, and poor food preparation. In one notable case, a federal judge held D.C. jail officials in contempt for failing to provide adequate medical records and care for a detainee with a broken wrist and cancer. Now, this is where it gets ironic. Democrats and officials said that while the restrictive housing was harsh on the January 6ers, it was a necessary safety measure for high-profile defendants. They also argued that the inhumane conditions cited by the proponents of the January 6ers had been a reality for those D.C. jail inmates for decades without receiving similar national attention. So they defended the treatment of the January 6ers with the exact same thing we're using to defend the treatment of Cole Allen. How this judge got his job is beyond me. He said Allen deserves a fair trial, and he's right. But he's not going to get a fair trial if this judge ends up being the trial judge. Zero chance. It bothers me that no one said any of this to the judge at the hearing. No one challenged the judge's claims on the treatment of Cole compared to the January 6ers. They're being treated exactly the same.
There was no January 6er who was anywhere near as high profile as Cole Allen is now. The left loves January 6 because they can use it to go after Trump, but what actually happened that day was not actually on Trump. It was not a great day for the country, but it was massively overblown by the left-wing media. The only person that died that day was a woman named Ashley Babbitt, and she was shot by police. The two other deaths that are linked to that day were police officers who died days later, and they had medical conditions that may or may not have had something to do with it. The first police officer, who who died had a heart attack a couple days after January 6th. Was that because of January 6th? Who knows? As far as how this judge got the job, I think if you really thought about it, you would know. I would ask you how Ketanji Brown Jackson got her job. Well, thankfully, Joe Biden told us how. She was a black woman. This judge is in a similar position, but he got his job because of his political leaning.
Yeah. Now, here's a question for you, Matt. What would happen if some random guy did this in Iran? What would happen if some random guy typed out a list of all the leaders in Iran that he wanted to kill, and then he stormed a building full of them with several weapons? I'm guessing he wouldn't be too worried about the jail conditions.
If he was taken alive, the next day he would have a public execution. That execution would be brutal. Likely a stoning or a hanging or a guillotine execution. It would be horrific, beyond the things the average person in the Western world could comprehend.
Sounds like a great place to live.
Yeah, but all of the left-wing feminists are going to go over there and cheer when they get their feminist wave, right?
Mm-hmm. Here's my last thought on this story. The judge said directly to Cole Allen, quote, "Whatever you've been through, I apologize," end quote. He also said, quote, "Mr. Allen, I'm sorry that things have not been the way they're supposed to," end quote. So to U.S. Magistrate Judge Zia Faruqui, you're a moron.
Did the judge actually corroborate anything Allen said or Allen's defense team said?
No, his defense team made the claims, and then the judge just automatically assumed that it was correct.
So we don't even know if it actually happened. Good to know.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I went through the list of all the things that they said. There is a reasonable explanation. Even if they're telling the truth, there is a reasonable explanation on why all these things occurred. The only thing that I'm not sure about is he said he requested a Bible and they denied him a Bible. I'm not sure if that is something they have to give you. But even if he requested a Bible and they didn't give it to him, dude, well, you'll get it eventually. So what?
And if you're a suicide threat.
Yeah, if you're a suicide threat, you don't even get to wear clothes. You wear a suicide smock that's held together with Velcro. So.
Not a great look for the judge. Absolutely not.
No. All right, let's move on to our Iran updates. We're getting some news today that we are on the verge of the war ending.
Listen to this. Brand new reporting from Axios in the last hour says the White House believes it is on the verge of an agreement with Iran to end the war and set a framework for detailed nuclear negotiations. This new info is after President Trump announced he would pause Project Freedom, citing progress in talks with Iran. Former U.S. Ambassador to NATO Kurt Volker joins me now. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. It's clear that this could have been the direction that things were going, given what the president said yesterday on Truth Social with the pause of Project Freedom and the secretary saying that the end of this operation has taken place and a new phase is going to begin. And now we have this potentially substantive reporting out of Axios with a report that goes on to say, among other provisions, the deal would involve Iran committing to a moratorium on nuclear enrichment, the U.S. agreeing to lift its sanctions and release billions in frozen Iranian funds, and both sides lifting restrictions around transit through the Strait of Hormuz. Many of the terms laid out in the memo would be contingent on a final agreement being reached, leaving the possibility of renewed war or an extended limbo in which the hot war has stopped but nothing is truly resolved.
Could we be at the end? I'd like to think this is for real, but how much faith do we have in Iran to keep their word?
For me, zero. I have to say it. Trump is all over the place with the messaging, and that's a big knock on him. The strait's open because we want it to be one moment, then it's closed. The length of the deal, which was reported at 5 years, simply is not long enough, but I don't trust them to go even 5 years before they try to get their hands on a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of all this. I agree, the messaging is all over the place. And if the deal is only 5 years, what's to stop Iran from waiting the 5 years. That's going to be into the next presidential term. What if the next president is a Democrat?
Yeah, and the deal says they can enrich uranium up to 4% after 5 years. But what's to stop them from going even higher?
Yeah, exactly.
And again, Trump won't be in office. There's a real chance the next president is very weak and will let them do whatever they want.
Yeah, and even if we get a JD Vance or Marco Rubio or any Republican as the next president, well, 4 years after that, it might be a Democrat. Eventually, we're going to have another Democrat president, and there's no telling if they're going to back down or stand up to Iran at that point.
It would be very easy for Trump and whoever the next president is, and probably the president after that, to keep kicking the can down the road. It will ultimately do more damage later on. We will be dealing with this again if this regime is still in power.
Yeah, now I want to bring up a few things Marco Rubio said the other day when he filled in for Caroline Leavitt. Check this out.
The president, our president, has proven time and again that his preference is peace. But Iran must accept the reality of this situation and come to the negotiation table and accept terms that are good for them, but ultimately good for the world. The diplomatic path, if there's a real diplomatic path, I'm not always going to be one, but if there's a real diplomatic path and we continue to explore it, Steve and Jared are working on that very hard. If there is one there, it could be one that leads them to reconstruction, to prosperity, and to stability, and to not posing a threat to the world. The alternative is growing isolation, economic collapse, and ultimately total defeat. I know what the right choice is for Iran. I hope that the people over there making decisions will make the right one. The last point I would make, and it really is important for them to understand this, is they really shouldn't test the will of the United States, at least not under President Donald Trump. He has proven time and again that he will back up what he says. And if they test him, ultimately they will lose. The hard way, the easy way, the long way, the short way, they will lose.
I really like Marco Rubio, but Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner do not inspire confidence for me. I don't doubt Rubio when he says don't push or test Trump when it comes to this sort of thing. We don't have our best negotiators there if Witkoff and Kushner are leading the negotiations. It's that simple. Has Iran made the right decision at any point in the last 47 years? No. So why is this going to be the time?
Yeah, one of the big things we've been talking about, too, is gas prices. And that's how most Americans judge the administration. Gas prices and inflation. Here was Marco Rubio's response when asked about the current gas prices and them coming down.
The average price of gas in the country right now is $4.50. Do you have a thought on how long Americans are supposed to kind of accept this? Do you think it will affect Republicans' majorities in the midterms?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on the politics of it. You can tell me, look, it's obviously being driven by global events. That was true during the Russia-Ukraine war as well, where you saw that come up. Look, we don't benefit from the straits as much as other countries. I don't know if you've seen what the gas prices are like in other parts of the world that are really suffering big time. So we're very fortunate that the United States, I believe right now, is like the world's largest net exporter of oil and natural gas as a result, not because of this war, but because we have this capacity. So we've been insulated to some degree. We're obviously still vulnerable to some extent to global prices, but in the end, we're more insulated than other countries, even though that's not welcome news to Americans that are paying more at the pump, no doubt about it. And it certainly is one of the circumstances of it. There are people that were predicting would be much higher at this point, but we're not taking that for granted. Suffice it to say that think about it this way. Everybody needs to think about it this way. If Iran had a nuclear weapon and they decided to close the straits and make our gas prices like $9 a gallon or $8 a gallon, we wouldn't be able to do anything about it because they have a nuclear weapon. And a nuclear-armed Iran could do whatever the hell they want with the straits, and there's nothing anyone would be able to do about it. And that's one of the many reasons, apart from like the massive loss of life in a nuclear strike, why Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. So this is an example of, if they had a nuclear weapon, they closed the straits and they would tell the world, what are you going to do about it? We have a nuclear weapon, we can attack you with it. That's the world none of us want to leave behind. It won't happen under this president's watch, but some future president and in the future Americans will have to deal with this. So it's just one more example of why these guys can never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon.
We are the largest global producer of oil and gas, and we are the largest exporter of oil and gas by quite a margin. That much is true. Rubio is right. You can't let the leading sponsor of terrorism have the leverage to damage the global economy. If they had a nuclear weapon, they would use it to their advantage, and it would hurt everyone else, not just in the US, but all over the world. That to me is why Europe not wanting to let us use the bases we had there was such a big deal. They would be destroyed if Iran did what Rubio suggested there. They are far more dependent on oil from the Gulf region, and if that moment came true, the US and Canada could enact laws that prohibited the export of oil and gas, which would bring our prices down and disconnect us from the global oil industry. It would likely hurt oil production in the US, but that would also make it even worse for Europe. In that scenario, there's a lot of European nations that would be pushing third world country type of industry. There are far too many countries in Europe dependent on oil and gas from their enemies. Germany was a big example. They were completely dependent on Russian oil and gas.
Yeah, and I don't think it's any question whether or not Iran would use a nuclear weapon if they had it. We can tell that just based off of what they're doing in the Strait of Hormuz. They're willing to put mines and take over ships in the Strait of Hormuz. So what's to say if they had a nuclear weapon, they don't do the same thing and then say, anybody that gets in our way, we'll just use the nuclear weapon?
I always find it really interesting because they've been chanting death to America and death to Israel for 47 years. Why is it that Republicans listened to it and took it seriously and the left didn't? If I told you for decades that I was going to come and destroy you, would you take that lightly? If I said it once, would you ignore it?
No, and that's one of the things Pete Hegseth said in front of Congress the other day. Somebody asked him a question about something, I don't remember what it was, and then he responded with, are we supposed to not believe Iran when they say death to America? Do you not believe them? Why am I wrong? Because I do believe them. Going back to Marco Rubio, this was perhaps the highlight from his entire press conference. A reporter asked him what his hope was for America, and I think he gave the perfect answer.
You've had a deep faith for God and country. At the end of the day, with all that you've been involved in,
keep going.
You've been extremely busy.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
As we all know. I got to ask you, what is your hope for America at a time such as this?
My hope for America?
And how do you personally deal with that?
Yeah, look, I mean, my hope for America is what it's always been. I think it's the hope I hope we all share. We want it to continue to be the place where anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, where you're not limited by the circumstances of your birth, by the color of your skin, by your ethnicity, but frankly, it's a place where you are able to overcome challenges and achieve your full potential. I think that should be the goal of every country in the world, frankly, but I think in the U.S., we're not perfect. Our history is not one of perfection, but it's still better than anybody else's history, and ours is a story of perpetual improvement. Each generation has left the next generation of Americans freer, more prosperous, safer, and that is our goal as well. But it is a unique and exceptional country, and as we come upon this 250-year anniversary, I think we have a lot to learn and be proud of in our history. It is one of perpetual and continuous improvement, where each generation has done its part to bring us closer to fulfilling the vision that the founders of this country had upon its founding.
That right there is why right now he would be my choice for vice president to JD Vance on the next ticket. He is well-spoken and has a vision that is in line with history. We are the greatest country on earth. There has never been a richer, more free, more prosperous nation in the history of our planet. I had a question for you, Mike. I really wanted to ask you this to see what you thought. If the United Kingdom was a state of the United States, and the U.S. had 51 states where the UK was one of them, where would the UK rank on the list of states as far as wealth? Rank them 1 to 51. What number is the UK?
51.
They are 51.
And it's not close either. I believe they would be well under Mississippi, I believe is 50th, right?
They are way under the poorest U.S. state, which is Mississippi.
Yeah. The UK is really not as big compared to the U.S. as they think they are. I've seen several videos about this. The entire United Kingdom, 4 separate countries, all fit inside of a national park in Alaska. Not even the whole state of Alaska, just the national park. They all fit inside of it.
By landmass, the U.S. is 40 times larger. It's not just the UK, though. You can look at the richest province in Canada, which is supposed to be a near peer to us. The richest province in Canada would also be 51st, by a larger margin than the UK. That is why when the U.S. says, we have the best system, we are right.
Yep, there's a reason people want to keep coming here. Now, last thing we have on Iran here, Pete Hegseth has been in front of Congress this week. As I mentioned before, this is probably the best clip I found on some of the exchanges that he's had. Representative John Garamendi calls the conflict with Iran a quagmire, and Pete Hegseth was not happy about it.
The president has got himself and America stuck in the quagmire of another war in the Middle East. He's desperately trying to extricate himself from his own mistakes. It is in America's and indeed the world's interest that he succeed in that.
I hope you appreciate how reckless it is. When I said reckless, feckless, and defeatist of congressional Democrats at the beginning, that came after watching you say the same thing on CNN this morning, a quagmire. My generation served in a quagmire in Iraq and Afghanistan, years and years of nebulous missions and utopian nation building that led us to nothing. What we have right now, the way you stain the troops when you tell them 2 months in, Congressman, you should know better. Shame on you. Calling this a quagmire 2 months in. The effort, what they've undertaken, what they've succeeded, the success on the battlefield that could create strategic opportunities, the courage of a president to confront a nuclear Iran, and you call it a quagmire, handing propaganda to our enemies, shame on you for that statement. And statements like that are reckless to our troops. Don't say I support the troops on one hand, and then a 2-month mission is a quagmire. That's a false equivalation. Who are you cheering for here? Who are you pulling for? Our troops are doing incredible work. They've done incredible things for the entirety of this mission and achieved incredible battlefield successes. And you sit there and go on TV for your clickbait about quagmires. It undermines the mission. Your hatred for President Trump blinds you to the truth of the success of this mission and the historic stakes that the president is addressing, which the American people support. Iran's been at war with us for 47 years. You want to talk about a forever war? For 2 months, this president has stared them down. He's going to get a better deal than anyone ever has and ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon. I know the American people support that mission, despite your loose talk and words like quagmire.
Handing propaganda to our enemy might be the most important part of what Hegseth said. No doubt that Iran is taking the words of Democrats and spinning them inside their own country to make it seem like we're the bad guys. What does it say about our country that half the people in this country want us to lose? And we know which half it is. It's the same half that think men are women and women are men.
You are right, and it goes back to Trump. Their hatred of Trump, and in part America, is so great they would rather see us lose. We are not losing, and it's not a quagmire. It has been 2 months, and we don't even have boots on the ground. We could walk away tomorrow, but it's in our best interest to stay and finish this until we get our desired outcome. It does mean higher gas prices for the short term, but the short-term pain is worth it to avoid a much bigger disaster later on. I don't like paying over $4 for gas, but I will deal with it for now, so it's not far worse in the future.
Yep, 100% agree. And I think people should also think about the fact that while it has been 2 months, we're doing all these strategic military operations. If we really wanted to, we could just flatten the entire country. In one day, we could just flatten them and then leave. But we don't do that because we're better than that.
We want minimum civilian casualties, which other sides don't care about. And you're right. Yeah. Don't say we've never done it, because if you go back to World War II, the US and the UK carpet bombed Germany, just like Germany did to us. We also dropped city destroyers on Japan. It's been done in the past. Other nations have done it very recently. Russia does it regularly. Go look at what they did in Chechnya when they carpet bombed the city with artillery. They would blow up building after building and take it one block at a time.
You mentioned World War II there. How soon after World War II was World War III and IV? Ilhan Omar would like to know.
Well, World War II ended in 1945, and we've apparently had 11 of them, so...
all right.
They missed that part in history class in high school.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the end of the show here. It is blind ranking time. Matt, today we are doing political commentators. Are you ready?
Let's go.
All right, your first one up is Bill Maher.
Bill Maher. I don't mind him. He can have a conversation with anyone, and that's not something you can really say with people on the left now.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't agree with everything he says, but I'm going to put him at 4 because I'd love to have a conversation with him.
Okay, number 4. Next up, you have Will Cain.
Will Cain goes really, really high on my list because this is the man that sat at the desk at ESPN and told a bunch of liberal people why the WNBA doesn't make as much as the NBA. You can talk politics or sports with Will Cain, so I'm going number 1.
Okay, number 1. All right, I have a feeling I know where this one's going. Next up, Joy Reid.
5.
Number 5 for Joy Reid.
Worst one you could give me. I'd rather go on The View.
All right, and next up, you have 2 and 3 left. You have Michael Knowles.
I like Michael Knowles. That might be a controversial opinion. Number 2.
Number 2. Okay, I like Michael Knowles too. And in your number 3 spot, you have Don Lemon. You'd like to flip Don Lemon and Bill Maher, right?
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
I have white skin, so I'd immediately be called a racist.
Yep. All right, well, you finished with Joy Reid at 5, Bill Maher 4, Don Lemon 3, Michael Knowles 2, and Will Cain number 1. All right, that's it for episode 55 of the Republic Brothers podcast. Before you click away, please hit the subscribe or follow button. New episodes drop every Monday and Thursday. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.